Sorry about that. I got the blue screen of death there. So we are back in business. What I was saying before is when we want to determine if a number is even or odd. If it's divisible by 2 with no remainder, it's even. And if it's not divisible by 2 and you have a remainder, then that means it's odd. So we have the arithmetic operations that we learned in class, addition. And so I'll put it in a comment up here. We got, I don't know my keys anymore. Addition. We got subtraction. We have multiplication. We have division. And we have the modulo. And what the modulo is going to do is give you that remainder. So if you do 5 modulo 2, you'll get a 1 because 5 divided by 2, it does not evenly divide, if I'm saying that right. Anyway, so 2 times 2 is 4. Then you have 1 left over. The remainder is 1. So the modulo of 5 modulo 2, if you see it here, 5 modulo 2 would equal 1. And I can show you that if I go and open up a terminal here, and we make this a little bit bigger, and I do node, we have the modulo 5 modulo 2, and you can see that gives me back 1. And if I did 4 modulo 2, you'll see that gives me 0. And again, since we have some tests that we want, if you go in here, because this is a good way to test your code before you write it, you can always just use the console. We wanted to check, hey, is 777 odd or even? So we'll grab that, and then I will do, hey, we have num equals 777, num modulo 2, that gives me 1. So it's odd, and we know that 777 is odd. So, crap. Let me go back to that, and let me exit that so I don't have a node process running on my computer. All right, so let's go back to odd or even. So now that we know that, we have a conditional, if this, then that. And if you can say, if this is true, then let's do something. Otherwise, do something else. You always know you need an if statement. So we can say, if the num that we receive when this function is called modulo 2 equals 0, then we want to return even. Okay, so we have the first case, and then we can come over to our test here to the right. I'm using Firefox, but it works the same thing as in Chrome. If we hit refresh here, oh, I didn't save it. If you have this circle up top here, it means you didn't save your file. So if we hit refresh here, now you'll see down at the bottom, I got a green check mark. Should return the string even if a number is evenly divisible by 2. So we have that. And then whenever you encounter a return, that function stops executing. So anything below the return that is run will not happen. So if I had like console.log hello, this wouldn't run because if an even number was passed in here, this if check would be true and return here, the function would return here, and it would never get to console.log. So what we can do now is we know if we have an even number, we're returning a string. Now we can just return odd. And I'll put my little semicolons here. And this should work. So if we hit refresh, now we got two check marks. We don't have to check if it's a number yet. And we're assuming that we have a positive, I believe. It's a fair assumption because of our tests. We haven't taught functions yet, so instead of this, if you really did want to, if we were going by what we have done in class, then you use the else block, and if it's not even, then it has to be odd, so we'll return odd here. So either way works, and if we refresh, we see that both tests are still passing. I guess it's personal preference, but I really like the way this looks, so we're going to keep this. All right, so that is 2 down. and we just have one more to go. So if we go to the README here, and let me render it so it looks pretty. I'm blind, so I need to look pretty. So the instructions are open unsolved log-nums.js in your code editor. This is the only file we modify. Okay, so same thing as all the other ones. In this file, we'll be writing code in the body of the log_nums function to achieve the following: print all of the numbers from 1 up to a given nums. So I'm assuming nums is what's going to be passed into our function, inclusive, and that's going to be really important for our as soon as I see print all numbers from 1 up to a certain thing, I know that we're going to need a for loop, and this inclusive is really important. So for example, given the number 5 as the num argument, the following should be printed along the console: 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that's another thing that's super important, is notice that there's no 0. We're starting at 1. So then we can check that the test passed. So we'll get our test set up here. I am in WSL, which is Windows Subsystem for Linux. The file path is not great. So it's saying VS Code remote. This doesn't work. So what I need to do is reopen folder in Windows so I can have a nice clean path. What happened to my odd or even? Well, that's not cool. Anyway, that doesn't matter. We don't need that anymore. So we'll go here, grab the test, bring it over here. Hello. Go in there, please. I could also right click and say open in default browser. And I can actually just show you that so that you know there's multiple ways to do the same thing. So there's a log nums, log numbers 1 through num, and it gives this little, I actually clicked on this and I didn't know this happened, but it gives you a little block here and says arnum10 log nums, and the console should print out this stuff. And that's 1 through 10. So if we go, don't save that, and we got arithmetic here, we got our preview. So if we open up log nums, so we have our function, print all numbers 1 to num. Remember, num is inclusive and it starts at 1. So if you remember from class how we write a for loop, we have our for, and then we have to initialize our variable so we can do our a variable, so we can do some conditional checks here. So you're going to want to write var I equals 0, I equals 1. So remember if I go back to this readme, and I mentioned that it's really important that this starts at 1. Normally you see I equals 0, but we want to start at 1 so that we don't have 0 print out. So we need a semicolon, then we have our expression here, and we need another semicolon, and this is how we increment it so we don't have an infinite loop. So what we're going to do is if I is less than num, and if you see what's wrong with that, we'll go, I'm writing it wrong on purpose, and then we're going to do I++, and we'll go over why this is wrong and why something was important that I mentioned earlier. We are just going to console.log I, and normally this would work. So this doesn't work, as you see, but if we go to I believe if we go to the console, we can see what is being printed out. If we go to console here, you see I have 1 through 9, and that's why, let me make that a little bit bigger if I can. That is why I mentioned that the inclusive was important here. Where did it say? 1 given to nums, inclusive. So we're going to loop through on the first iteration. I is 1. Okay. We won't go through the whole thing, but I'll just show you how the for loop is going to execute, and then we can see why we didn't get the correct answer here. So on the first iteration, when we call this function, we hit the for loop in 6 here, and then what happens is I is initialized to 1, so I is 1 right here, which is we've passed in num here. Num is going to be 10. So that's what num is going to be when this function's called. So 1 is less than 10. That's true. So it's going to go in here. It's going to run this code, console log I. Once this code inside the for loop is done running or executing, it's going to go up here to this third part of our for loop, and it's going to increment I by 1. So now I is going to be 2. So it's not going to run this again. It's going to go to our expression and see if this evaluates to true. So I is now 2, which is less than 10. Then that's true. So it's going to go in here. It's going to run line 8, console.log. It's going to go back up to here, I++. Now I is 3. And we're going to go into all those iterations. So I is 3, which is true. It's less than 10, so it's true. It goes in here. It runs line 8, console.log I. It's going to print out 3. And we go back up here to I++. And I can continue on until for the whole thing, but we'll just skip to the end where I is 9 here. And that's less than 10. It's true. And it runs line 8, console.log, and it's going to print out 9, which you see down here in the browser. And it's going to hit I++, and now I is 10. So we want to print out 10. But when it gets to our expression here, 10 is less than 10. That evaluates to false. So now this is going to exit our for loop. It's going to go to line 9, and it's going to execute whatever code we have down here. So imagine that's some code that you can run. So that's why you don't see 10 here, because 10 is less than 10 is always going to be false. What you have to do is less than or equal to, and then now 10 is less than or equal to 10, and that's true because 10 equals 10. So if we hit refresh here, we got our check mark. Hey, we got all greens. Can I run and debug this so I can show you that a little bit better? I know for loops are a pain point. I've never actually done this. Let's see. Chrome. Let's run that in Chrome. I don't know what this is doing. Oh, I don't have .NET installed. I don't want to install .NET. Why do I need to install .NET? Oh, something happened. All right, so I don't have a server running. Let's do Node.js. I have a launch.json. That's cool. All right. If this doesn't work, then that's fine. I won't go through the debugging this time. I'll figure it out for next time. But if we go here and create JavaScript debug thingy and we hit run, something happened. This is running git bash. Run and debug. This is the last time I'll try. It can't find node in my binary. That's fine. Okay, I don't have Node.js installed on Windows. I have it installed in my WSL, so that's messing some things up. I can fix that later. But anyway, here it is, all the algorithms. If you have any questions, just message me on Slack. These aren't too bad. These are pretty simple. They're going to get a lot harder as the class goes on, as we know more. I imagine a lot of the trouble came from they have functions here, and you don't know how to use the functions, and also no README in here explained how these tests work. So I'm sure we would have got before our break on the last day of JavaScript. They probably mentioned it, but hey, you have it early, and you can practice with some functions. Remember, JavaScript functions. If you Google that, functions. And the third one, developer.mozilla.org. You can read a whole bunch on functions here. There's a lot. There's calling functions. There's the different types of functions, how you can define functions different ways. the scopes of functions. We're going to get to all this in class, so don't worry. It's probably going to be super confusing if you read this right now. But it's a good resource to look at. It does have examples, nested functions and closures, even bigger concept. But as you can see, it's a very large document, but it gives you examples, and you can always just run them in your VS Code. Like if you copy this example, and in here we create a new let's say I'm going to create a new HTML file, not in there. I'm just this is why I like terminals. Touch index.html. Boop. Hello. Okay. Why aren't you here? Where am I? I see it right there. Anyway, we can code here. Open new one. No, you don't want to work for me. There we go. Let's open up this. All right. So again, I gotta open up in Windows. I can close that now. I'm learning some things about VS Code and WSL. So if I wanted to just this is an index.html. I wanted a JS file, but that's fine because we can do our exclamation point, hit tab. Now we have our boilerplate HTML. I can write a script tag here, and I can not open settings. I can end that script tag. Oh, okay. And if I paste all that in there, and I save it, and now I can open in default browser. Okay, you don't want to work because we're still in WSL. Reopen in Windows, please. Okay, so now we didn't go over what this code's actually doing, but I probably didn't pick a good example here. I'll see what it's doing. All right, so we have an array, which we went over arrays in the last class, of hydrogen, helium, lithium, and beryllium. We're declaring another variable, A2, and map is a method on an array that you run an anonymous function in there, and you do some work on each item of the array, and it returns a new array for you. So what this is doing, I don't want to go too much into this, but what this is doing is it's doing a for loop over this array here, and each item in this array is going to get passed into this function as s, and it's returning s.length, so the length of hydrogen, helium, lithium, and beryllium. So what you'll see here is A2 is going to be a new array of the number of characters in each word in the array, and you see that here. And this is another way. This is an arrow function. This is ES6, and we're going to get to this like halfway through the class, so do not worry about this. The way this looks at the moment, this is still a function, and what it is doing, it's just doing the same thing. It's returning s.length, and it's giving you a new array of all that stuff. So if I didn't inspect here and I went to the console, you can see I have the two arrays just like here because their console logs them right there. So if you want to run some of those examples to see what they're doing, and read the code, because reading code's harder than actually writing the code, then I welcome you to do that. So if that helped, I'm glad. Have a good Christmas, and I will see you in class.